Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. We've set out to create a platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect through their affinity groups. But this show is all about athletes transitioning out of sports. It's become a major issue. And what I do is we interview various former collegiate athletes, professional athletes, and talk about their journey. And the idea is to teach and inspire athletes about life after sports. And today we're really excited to have John Saintignon on. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate you having me on, and I hope I could shed a little light on any subject that you bring up, and hopefully maybe inspire somebody.
That'd be fantastic. And my coaching roots were more like little league sports. I did coach a travel baseball team for a long time, so that was my coaching experience. So John played basketball in college. He was at UC Santa Cruz and then at UC San Diego. And then once his playing career was over, he got into coaching, coaching high school, coaching college, and ultimately coaching overseas, which we'll hear all about. And then now today, he's still looking for that next gig, which is going to be that great head coaching job. Well, yeah, maybe like some NBA team will come reaching out for you.
Yeah.
And then also he's a business consultant. So the one thing I always ask people, talk about when you were growing up playing sports and how that kind of shaped you from youth sports up until college.
Well, luckily, I had a great set of parents, and they stressed that my academics were going to always come first. So I never lost sight of that. Even as a young kid, my homework had to be done and completed before I could go outside and play. So that was my norm. And luckily, the coaches that I was surrounded with, that was also their viewpoint too. That you must be a good student, then you could play. So luckily, I was guided in that pathway first, and it never stopped with me. Actually, it stayed with me the entire time. And even formulated a mantra that I kept along the way, because all through high school, including college, and even professionally, I tell players all the time, basketball is a tool to get an education. There are some athletes that think they were born for the sport that they play, and reality will hit them. It usually is abrupt with an injury or something, and but if you're using it the right way, it treats you well. You have a perspective, and you can move on. And because you don't get to play this game till you're 50 years old, you are about a short window of time in almost all athletics. Yeah. And so you must maximize that time to the utmost, and because you don't want to go back and look at 40 years old and live with regret.
No, definitely not. And we're definitely going to cover all those topics, because that's great. And I think it's just the perseverance and the practice, the hard work, and all that you kind of set you up for that. So let's talk a little bit about my fun question I was asked is, when you were young, did you dream about being a professional athlete? And if so, what sport?
Yeah, all young kids think about things, and that was in the infant stages of sports and television at the time. There was ABC, CBS, NBC. It wasn't a wide range of things yet. So, I was introduced to all the sports, luckily. But my across the street that was incredible, and I emulated him. I saw the work ethic, I saw the diligence that he was putting in, the time, his commitment, the look that he had, and he was the number one racer, and I used that when I discovered that basketball was my pathway. Ironically, that's how I emulated at the time. There's a certain look, like almost all athletes have. They call it game face, but in these other sports that have a motor attached to it, there's speed, there's some other things that are involved as well, that are very tough to see. And doesn't matter what endeavor you're in, time is how do you use that time?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I joke around. I always say, I want to be a Major League Baseball player. Unfortunately, the talent wasn't quite there. So this is what I do today. So let's we're gonna fast forward now to college. So playing college basketball, I mean, one of the things, and you like me, I mean, things have changed obviously, in newer basketball and other sports and all that as far as the education goes. But was there an attempt from your schools to kind of talk about life after sports? Back when you were in school.
So yeah, so I'm in college in the late 80s, and yeah, the ed, again, it was basketball's a tool. What you're going to get the degree. It was never a thought to leave school early to go play something else. It was never it was always the degree. We need to get the degree. And at that point, they did have these markers where, those student athletes that you did bring on campus needed to graduate. Since that may have gone away.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the talk, and coaches had to really live by it. If you had someone who was an engineering student on your campus, who actually played a sport, and they had some laboratory, it was a interesting dilemma. On my particular teams, it was never a question. They went.
Right.
I'm not sure today that that's even remotely considered. You're a full-time employee either way you look at it now.
Right. Sure.
As an athlete.
Yeah, you're right. And I think back too. I mean, I ran college. I ran in college. I ran cross country and track, and it's a little bit different. I mean, obviously there's a lot of practice, but not quite like some of the other sports. But you're right. I think you back then, because I was going to school in the '80s as well. It was about the degree, and now whether it's coming out early or just NIL, which we'll talk about, but things like that certainly make a difference. And like what we're trying to do too is just help to see what we can do to work with schools, whether it's college or even high schools, and try to help them develop further curriculum in having that athlete look at more of that holistic. Obviously they're going to focus on their sport, but also giving them that bigger picture, so once they are done with their sport, they have something to do.
Yeah, no question. I mean, it's you're putting your mouth, your money where your mouth is, in college, when you were at the time period that we were at, because you had to say, you are going to walk away with your degree. That was part of your selling point. Today, it should still be part of the selling point, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I mean, you're there for the education. I mean, again, you've got the sport, but you're still there for the education. So let's talk a little bit about alumni engagement. So one of the things, and I've talked about it, and I guess we'll take a two-part question. One, when you were at school and where you were at, just alumni interaction with the athletes. And I'm not talking about like coming back for like golf tournaments. I'm more about helping them to, again, see that bigger picture. Maybe it's for jobs or other things. And then, well, the second part of that will be talk more about what you see today, either, within, the schools that you went to as an alumni, or just as general as a coach.
Well, I think, in my opinion, it is certainly something that has to be cultivated from not only the respective coach. I think that's where it starts from. There are many huge departments now that have this actively engaged as well, but it wasn't so much. It was very micro. There would be some that graduated maybe before you that interacted, but never to the point where they were willing to assist you in some other future endeavor. And maybe it's because you lose connections along the way.
Right.
Possibly it too. There are many reunions that occur, and that's always a benefit, but there's never that. And mainly because maybe coaches change a lot. So the regime, you're not under that same guy. Let's take Duke, for example. The reason why Duke has that brotherhood so fantastic is because there's one solid guy that was there for a long period of time, and that transcended even back in when I was playing UCLA with Coach Wooden. It was a long-standing tradition, and therefore they were willing to kind of help one another for many years because they were under the same person.
Right.
Once those regimes change, players become forgotten. whether directly or indirectly,
Yeah.
because it's not my guy. I
Yeah.
didn't recruit him. He didn't play under me. And so there's a different sense that goes along with it. There are some institutions that are remarkable at this, like one that comes to mind is like USC,
Okay.
The Trojan Family Network, they call it. It's beyond belief. I mean, they keep USC at the forefront of every discussion that they kind of have,
Right.
unwritten rules that they have with one another as alumni. Probably comes to bear fruit later in life,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, it's still a strong affinity towards gratitude from where they came from.
Right.
And those bigger institutions have that in play. But as it relates to the particular individual sport, back to the question you asked, I think it's because the coaching has changed quite often, and it's hard to build that stability because it's not your guy.
Yeah, and a couple, some of these different podcasts. One, I was talking to a guy, former NFL player, and he played at Rutgers under Coach Schiano, and he talked about the same thing, that like Coach Schiano was all about taking care of his guys, and so I think it, definitely, to your point, it starts at a coaching level, but I think as we talk about just the whole, the issues with athletes transition out of sports, and having that network, especially the network of alumni, it probably has to be more at a higher level of the school itself, like maybe the athletic department across all sports, because there's going to be individual teams, like you're saying, where the coach really cares, like Coach K and all that. But I think it's got to be a bigger issue. And I think if they do it more at a school, and some schools are better than others, obviously.
Yeah, you got to keep it the key word was relationship. You've got to keep it together. You got to cultivate it on all the time. No matter what, it takes somebody full time engaging one another over and over again.
Right. And then even talk a little bit about because you played in college and you played professionally. Talk about networking, connecting. I know we talked offline about it, and it's something that is part of your skill set. But how do you see with other athletes doing? Like, what have you seen as far as when they're playing? Are they networking, connecting, whether it's alumni or just in general?
No, today's athlete really likes to put out something and get a like, and put videos out there, Instagram and other things, and gains attention by that way. And there is some attention, but it is not the same as getting on a phone and contacting somebody and having that meaningful conversation. That doesn't exist that well. It's rare for somebody to do that now. Because it's powerful to hear someone else's story. And everyone has one, and you want to ask them. They will go out of their way to help. I am available to the all the alumni that played after me. They just don't reach out to me. They won't.
Right.
Because for whatever reason it is, whether they think I'm too old or not engaged from what they went through, too far removed, or embarrassed, or they don't know me. I don't know what the deal is, but you see, if I feel that way, then I know a lot of people feel that way. They just want to be asked, talked to. Who isn't going to want to help somebody who followed in their footsteps?
Right. And that's
I
why
I didn't invent the game. Someone came before me, and I'm totally respectful of what they did. Again, it goes back to that same thing. If you're humble about where you came from, even though you may have been an All-American, you just didn't inbound the ball to yourself. You can't do all these things.
Right.
It takes everyone to get this done, and being humble, and then afterwards, it's lonely. You are now on an island. You are on your own now. And how do you go about this? Many are afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
They can send out a tweet and a text and an Instagram photo, but they can't ask for something. And when it's right in front of them.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to ask other than to say, great job, hey, I'm here for you. I don't know what else I could possibly do.
No,
Reach out.
yeah, you're right. And I think it's sad because even I was talking to one agent and she was telling me how her guy was an NFL player, retired NFL player, and he wanted to go back to his college. And it's almost like the college kind of frowned upon it. And some of it might be back to like what you said before, maybe because it wasn't the same coaching staff and all that. But I think it's important to tap into that. And I guess obviously it goes both ways. I mean, the athlete needs to be willing to reach out. But to your point, here you are willing to help, and I don't know what the answer is. Maybe it's the answer is it again working together with the school, with the athletes, and trying to bring it all together. And
all together, everything is together, because the same can be said for the athlete. The amount of requests that are asking us for money,
right?
But no dinner, no face to face. No relationship, impossible that I'm going to do that.
Right.
But when I was at Oregon State, I reached out to people that didn't even go to our institution, but because I wanted to know their story and then build a relationship and then invite them over for a game. Doesn't have to be ours. It could be football. It could be whatever.
Sure.
And ended up meeting them. Maybe they didn't make it over, but I would meet them at the Final Four. Remarkable. Because it was just my curiosity to build that relationship with them. You never know. Again, you never know what can happen. Worst case, don't answer my call. Best case, we have a nice conversation and it leads to something down the line.
Yeah. And I think it's, it's teaching. I was listening back today, one of these NFL players that was on my podcast, and he talked about just now, even in high school, like people starting to look at LinkedIn and some of these other things is trying to, encouraging that, whatever that it might be, utilizing the coach. It could be utilizing, work your friends' parents might have, cloud. Says I think the bottom line is that athletes need to be open to networking, connecting, so that when they do get to that finish line, there's the big path ahead of them. The next 40, 50 years that are laid out, they start having people they can talk to that can help them out.
It ends for all of us.
Right.
Heck, even the NFL player, I know I can relate because I spoke at the Super Bowl. I can talk to that player because that player understands that he's on a 17-week contract. He's week to week. There are only a few of them that make the multi-millions that last forever. The rest of them are 17 weeks and then they're done. And here comes a whole new flood of new guys. It's not one or two, it's 60 more that are coming on to fight for that position. So it's definitely a challenging deal. They know it doesn't last forever. And I think the average lifespan for them is, I'm not sure, but I think it might be 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I think it's that. In fact, one of the guys joked around with me. He said that NFL stands for not for long. So
yeah. And when you do speak to the ones that are there's some really highly intelligent guys, they know it doesn't last forever. They know they need to think about other things and other ways they can contribute and keep going forward.
Yeah.
Just what next? That's always it. We're taught to overcome adversity and obstacles in our sport and always think about the next play. And then you're faced with this reality at 27 years old, maybe, that the word retirement has hit your mind. What does that mean? Now what do I do? Well, I'm going to tell you this. If you didn't get your degree, you're going to have to go back and get it. That's a solid effort you're going to have to give. But if you didn't do it, are the chances of going back good or bad? I don't know. Life circumstances have taken you different places. You've now been used to some money, and now all of a sudden you don't know what's next.
Yeah.
It's a challenging situation to be in because lots of people think you can be able to play this thing forever.
Yeah.
Including your outside friends and everyone else. That's not the case, not the case at all.
No, it's hard. And then, you hear a lot about just the athletes identified themselves as whatever their sport was. And it's, sad, John, the basketball player, Rob, the runner, Bill, the baseball player, but, you've got a lot of other things ahead of you that you can look forward to. So let's talk a little bit about, it's kind of a hot topic, and it will be interesting to get your perspective as both a player and a coach. Give me some of your thoughts on NIL, name, image, likeness, and, the pros and the cons.
Well, I grew up during the time period when amateurism was exactly that, but we were unable to do anything else. You weren't able to go work. You, heaven forbid, compliance saw what you were doing. If you sold a ticket to a game, all these things were illegal, and yet the bookstore has your name on a jersey. And that's something else, and you can't afford gas in your car.
Yeah.
But the trade-off is you're getting a free education, you're getting other perks, you're getting to live on campus. It's an interesting dilemma both ways. Now the revenue that's being sourced out, it's astronomical, and somebody took it upon themselves to find out that they should be compensated for that. I always felt it was going to be an undue burden. How? Who do I determine who gets what? How do we disperse of these particular so-called funds? Monumental effort in my behalf to figure out how am I going to compensate who?
Yeah.
The superstar should get more than this guy. The lesser sport, the gymnastics, how did I even go about this? Now, the name, image, and likeness allows them to take advantage of their popularity,
right,
and maybe their business skill sets. I can't necessarily fault them, but maybe that's the onset of the tremendous transferring that happens. You have some quarterbacks who have transferred 5 times.
Yeah.
You have one particular basketball player that has an 8th year of eligibility.
Wow.
There are some circumstances that are just astronomical, to mind-blowing in my mind to think about. So how do I now need to go to the top 5 institution that has popularity and television and revenue and eyes on me. Otherwise, I don't get that name, image, and likeness.
Right.
And I can't imagine how it would be in a locker room if I'm the one that's getting that and no one else is.
True.
You're not all treated the same, but boy, that's coming from the haves and the have-nots too. To think that I'm contributing as an athlete to the overall success of a team, and yet I don't come in with a nice car. I don't know if there's harmony that exists. I know that on all teams there are some things called walk-ons.
Yeah.
And a walk-on, it gives every single bit of effort, has to do every single thing, no matter if they were told to run till they die. That guy's running till he dies. But when it comes time to go to training table and have dinner, he can't go. He's not a scholarship athlete, so he's not allowed to eat. He's allowed to throw up, but he's not allowed to eat with them. And now all of a sudden there's this line that just cuts them off. He can't even travel. You better be ready on Monday, but he can't travel Saturday. But that's that disparity without name, image, and likeness. Now you take the tremendous star who gets all this publicity with all these things. Heck, there's an interesting story. There's a kid in California in a high school that has millions. His name, image, and likeness is near 10 million.
Wow. Now,
that is more than anyone else that goes to that school, administrators, everybody. What kind of authority do you have over somebody like that? I don't know at 17 years old to have a mansion that's his own home. It's pretty tough to say how's he going to listen to that coach.
Yeah, it's you know, in everything you're saying, I could see the from a team chemistry standpoint, obviously it could be a major issue. And I know the other thing too, most people say is just the whole education process. And you know, it's new, but I think that's got to get better because you just look at all these people, you hear stories I talk about a lot. Somebody was telling me about how this one athlete got an NIL gig, and yeah, maybe it's not a huge one, but maybe let's say $30,000-$40,000. But because of that, it took them above the threshold of their scholarship. So they lost the scholarship, but then they blew the money. And so I think it's something that definitely has positives, but also I think there's a certainly need for education.
Yeah, there were unintended consequences for it. You know, I could see why the gentleman from UCLA did it. He sees himself on some multi-billion-dollar video game, but Ed O'Bannon was done playing already. You know, what would have happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened. Consequently, after that, one of the Ball brothers is driving on campus in a Porsche, Ferrari, something like that. It is based upon their success, right? And you'll have both windows that say, "Hey, man, he's successful." They use their business and their model and their branding, etc. You talk about some harmony in that locker room, man. It's not going to happen. It's not the same way. And we've all had teammates like that. They were just more well off than us. And I know I did. I know I saw one of our players had a Mercedes and we were starving. Yeah. And it was like, he was not ever. And it just couldn't relate. You know, we didn't come from the same relatable item.
Yeah, so, no, that's got to be difficult. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, as I started from the beginning about transitioning out of sports. So you went through two. So you went through transitioning out as a college player and then ultimately transitioning out as a professional player. Talk about both those journeys, and then along the way, maybe give some advice to other athletes of things that they can do.
So my journey, do you want me to talk about my journey as a professional athlete, you said?
No, talk about, first of all, talk about your transition out of college. So you have this college, out of college, you've had this whole college career. Now all of a sudden it's done. Now for you, fortunately, you went on to play professionally, but talk about, I guess, maybe that transition of, you know, all of a sudden you're done, you know, you were a leading scorer in college. Yeah. Now that's over. And now you're going into professional basketball.
Yeah. So it is totally now a job. So I'm fortunate to have led the country in scoring. I have a name attached, but I'm not on ESPN. There's no social media. This doesn't exist yet. And so what I'm doing is now you're getting these invitations to Summer Pro League in Los Angeles, which is equivalent to the NBA Summer League now in Vegas. Well, at that point, you're trying to perform in front of everybody. You're doing regular practice. It's just like it would be in a professional type setting. And if you're fortunate enough, somebody picked you up. I was fortunate enough, somebody picked me up at that point. And now your life has totally changed. Now you get this contract and now you're signing it because you're so happy you take whatever you can get. You don't know the difference. You can have an agent, but there was nothing that's monumental, earth-shattering amounts of money to play with. Round trip airline ticket, meals, place to live, time you're going to get paid. That's it. But now you're taking the chance to go to another country. And now it is a job. There is nobody cares about, you know, if you had a girlfriend, how your parents are doing, how you're doing in school. This is just pure performance based today. We show up to work. If you wish to talk to each other as teammates, more power to you, but it was not encouraged. You literally went your own way. And so
that's gotta be rough.
Coming from a collegiate setting where it's fun, you have a goal. The goal in professional basketball is, yes, win a championship. But let's be honest, it's about them getting numbers so that you are able to continue to play the game.
Right.
And so there's a selfish behavior that's really underlies professional sports. So you are alone. You're going to be in your room a lot alone. You're going to do everything alone. You're going to travel constantly, and you may or may not have a friend on the team, but you're going to have to work together. And internationally at that time, your coach could be smoking in the locker room, could be doing all these things, and you were playing in environments that were unique. Um, so that's the introduction. It's no longer for the love of the game, as they say. It changed. It became a job. And so you learn how to manage egos quickly. Can you find some relatable things? You hope. And that's why in professional sports, if you find some magical run, it's wonderful. You can see it. It looks different. It feels different. Most of the time you see the teams that are in disarray.
Right.
They don't really like each other. They're just there to put together to play. But chemistry is an underused word, and yet oversaid. It's not really understood. It's not really paid attention to. But boy, is it really an important part of the selection process,
Yeah, no, I'm sure. And then so you kind of changed this whole culture from the college to that. So when it was time to end your playing career, talk a little bit about that and how that was. And did you at that point go right into coaching, or was there any down period?
No, once I had enough of just having not necessarily the joy sucked out. I could have probably played another 2-3 more years. There was a such thing as a grind, and we were playing 4 times a week at that time. And so you were bouncing from city to city. You had to be on when the lights came on. You were always there at shoot around. It was an unbelievable taxing way to be an athlete. This whole thing about taking days off and rest, and all these trainers and Gatorade and hydration table, and all that stuff didn't exist. So you had to play, and even hurt. And most of us were hurt. Most of us that played during that time period have had a hip replacement, knee, something else has happened due to the pounding that you took on the surfaces that you played on.
Yeah.
However, once that decision was made, now what do I do? Well, again, going back to my parents, I'm grateful that they had stressed early on in life that basketball was a tool to get an education. Once I had my degree, I had choices in life. I could do whatever I wished. A car, a girlfriend, a house, I could lose all that. But what was I put inside my head, that piece of paper could never be taken away. So it gave me power in that I thought I could do whatever I needed to do. So I ended up going to law school, and quickly discovered that wasn't the pathway for me. I endured a whole year, and then decided that I never really thought that as a player that I could share my knowledge to somebody else who wasn't necessarily the same type of player, and inspire them to be better. I didn't know if I could do that. Many athletes go through that. I know what I can do, but I don't know if I can show you how to do it.
Right.
And so I became a high school coach and changed my way, and fell in love with it. It changed the way I was helping younger kids use that same thing. We're going to use basketball as a tool. You're going to move on with it. It doesn't last forever. I would always say that. They would see me still as an athlete, but I wanted them to know, like, I'm here to help teach a certain way that I see based upon the talent that I had at the time. And I got fortunate. We started to have success, started really enjoying it. and seeing them move on, like I had envisioned, helping them move on to go to college and change their life careers. But with high school basketball, there's not much money involved. There's stability, but there's no income.
Right. You need
It's a
another job.
stipend. It's a stipend job,
Yeah.
last a couple $1,000 is all you get. And so one day I get a call to go to the Pac-12 conference, in Oregon State University. And it's life-changing in that I know that once I take that particular position, that it requires now substantial potential moving all the time, because it doesn't last forever.
Right.
Yeah, the contract you sign is literally at will. You can be fired for anything. And every coach signs that, and that's what you are. You're coach. Coach Rick Pitino used to say it's a one-day contract. How did you do your day? It depends if you stay there or not. So it was every bit of that. It was exciting. It had travel. It had thousands of opportunities that came along with it, and yet doesn't last forever. So you start to have this vision that I wanted to be a head coach again. I was an assistant, and I had begun speaking outside the United States, getting invitations to speak abroad. And so I started to take those opportunities that were out there that were asked of me to be a head coach in a different country. And I took it, and it ended up being great because I got to see the world, use it as an adventure. And again, if it could compensate and allow me to live abroad, I'd have greater appreciation for what was happening when I got back. And as long as I got to take my family along with me, it was home.
Yeah.
It wasn't foreign. Now, fast forward many, many years, and I'm this past year in Japan. It's my 3rd year as a head coach in Japan. And all this entire time, my family has never been able to even see me because of the COVID restrictions and the border closing. 10 months out of the year is a long time, without there's the new advantageous of this new world, like we're having now. We're having face-to-face communication. I could see you, but personally being able to see them in person, it didn't exist, and I couldn't have it. But this year they did. But that's the lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's lonely. It's a different language, different rules, different cultures, and you're away. So when things happen, you miss it, or you're having to handle some situation thousands of miles away.
Yeah, no, that's got to be really difficult. And even the camaraderie and everything else, like you said, just talking to them as a player, obviously as a coach, it's the same thing, just not having the relationships probably with some of the different players on the team, and then just being away from the family. It's got to be difficult. So let's fast forward. I know you're still in the looking to continue the coaching, but we talked a little bit before about business consulting. Talk about some of the things that you're doing there today and how people can find you.
Well, I connect businesses. There's many people I've met along my life, and basketball has just been, again, that tool that has allowed us to have discussions with various CEOs. And I like to connect them, a great guy that I met to another great guy that I met, let them build synergy. I was just the conduit for it because we were all buddies at had something in common. And it helps, it helps me long run, to know that I did something good with nothing asked in return, let it move forward. Some good things have always happened because of that. I currently, I'm an executive producer on a 7-part series, that's a streaming show, later on this year. And again, based upon the relationships that I had built many years ago. It's a challenge, just like anything else. I told you before we began the podcast, it's just like the poem Robert Frost. In my life, there are always two paths that come, and it's not necessarily that I've chosen the one less traveled. I sometimes don't have a choice in it.
Yeah.
And yet, many people would say, just, why don't you go in the NBA? As if it was that simple. Why don't you do this? It's all this stuff has been extremely hard to get. And yet I just keep pursuing, because I do believe there are no accidents in life. Things happen for a reason. Why are they in front of me? Am I, for example, in Japan, there to win the championship? Is that what this is all about? I don't look at it that way necessarily. I look at it as like, I'm supposed to be here to change someone's life. I don't know how, where. It might not even be the guy on my team. It might be the guy on my team, might be 10 years later when he is trying to be a dad and make life decisions that are based upon maybe some conversations we had. But it might be some kid that I said hello to. It might be some speaking engagement with somebody else that I had. It might just be saying hello. Just something simple as hello to someone in another country can go a long way, because rigidity in cultures and not being able to say things. So that's how I look at it. There are no accidents. I'm supposed to use this. Why did this come in front of me? Hey, let's see where it happens with it. It'll lead to something else new and exciting. And see whose life I can impact.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I live the same way. I mean, I think it's all about paying it forward and helping people, and you just don't know this. And you're right, things happen for reasons. And maybe just even, like with this podcast, we look at if we can impact, hopefully a lot more, but like even one athlete to change their perspective on life and just put them in a better position would be fantastic. So how do people find you?
I'm on every single social media platform you can imagine, so my name is unique. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's not hard. You just type in my name and you can find me. Email. I'm out there. I'm an open book. There is nothing. I respond to everybody. I learned that a long time ago from a guy named Coach John Wooden. He took me under his wing, allowed me as a college player, when he saw me, to spend time to carve out time for somebody like me when all these phones were ringing for him and all the attention. I never forgot that. And so whether people think I'm so successful to not carve out time for someone, if I don't answer the phone, I get back to you. If I don't, I will always. I mean, I'm nothing. All I am is just a work in progress that just kept trying to move forward. So
well, you've definitely had an interesting journey, and I love that the attitude about helping people, and we'll put all that information in the show notes, and you can find Alumni Direct, alumnidirect.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and then also follow the show. I mean, we're on our Alumni Direct YouTube channel. We're also on all across podcasts, but this was great. I really appreciate the time tonight, John.
Yeah, you do that. You send all that information to me. I will definitely do the same. I'll share it to everybody I know.
That's great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Rob. Thank you very much. I hope I can help anybody.
Absolutely.